Aloha, my name is Kevin Kimball and I am an Associate Professor of Accounting at BYU, Hawaii. The purpose of this tutorial is to show you how to create a fixed payment mortgage amortization schedule or a fixed payment loan amortization schedule. When you've completed working through this video, your finalized worksheet should look very similar to this. It should be titled Mortgage Payment Calculator and Amortization Schedule. It should note who prepared it, when it was prepared, and its purpose. You should also have a data section. Data sections are used for allowing the user to input variables that will impact the report that you desire. In this case, the data section asks the user to input variables such as the home price, the down payment percentage that they can afford, which means how much cash can they apply towards the home purchase price, which would then leave a certain loan amount which would then have to be financed. So if you take the $750,000 minus the down payment of 30% or $225,000, the loan amount would be $525,000. This would then be financed at 5.5% at a fixed rate over 30 years. If you do that monthly, that's 360 payments, and the payment would be $2,980.89. If I hit the F2 button, you can see that this is the formula, and I will teach you through this video how to create this formula using range names, so that's very easy to read and understand. Down below, the answer section is dependent on the information up above. For example, if I go up to Formulas and I choose Trace Precedence, you'll see that this beginning balance comes from the loan amount above. If I then remove those arrows, we can go on and see that the first payment, I'll do Trace Precedence again, first payment, and since this is a fixed payment schedule, all payments will be the same, come from the computation up in the data section. Remove the arrows, and then I'll go over to Balance, and I'll trace precedence again. You can see that the balance at the end of any given month is the balance from the prior month minus or less the principal portion of the payment. So effectively what we're saying is if you make this $2,980 payment, a certain portion will go towards interest, the excess will go towards reducing the principal, and therefore your remaining balance is $524. If I remove those arrows and hit End Down, you'll see 360 payments later, the balance of the loan is zero. You should also notice something very important, is that in later payments, very little of the payment goes towards interest, and the bulk of the payment goes towards reducing the principal, as you can see here. Towards the beginning, hit the End Up button. You should see that in the beginning, most of your payment goes towards interest, and very little relatively goes towards principal. So that's what we're trying to achieve. I'll hit the Control Home button. When you're done with this video, you should be able to create this from scratch within 30 minutes. Good luck on this. We're going to create this amortization schedule in Microsoft Excel. In order to open up Microsoft Excel, there's many different approaches, but probably the surefire way is to go to All Programs, go up to Microsoft Office, and within the Microsoft Office listing there, you should see Microsoft Office Excel, and you click on it. When Microsoft Excel opens up, you'll notice that it provides a number of different menus at the top. These buttons here we call ribbons, and within each ribbon you have various groupings of menus that you can use that relate to that particular ribbon. So for example, under the Home ribbon you see it, you can change your font, alignment of text, various things such as that. And another thing you'll notice in Microsoft Excel is that it's a grid system. The columns are denoted by the letters A through Z, and then once it gets beyond Z, then it becomes, let's just go over there so you can see that. You'll see that it becomes AA, AB, AC, and it keeps going. And if I go End Over, End and then the right key, you'll see it goes to IV, so you can tell that there's a number of different columns in an Excel workbook. If I hit the Home button, I will actually go back to cell A1 when I'm on that row. The rows are numbered 1 through, and since this is currently an Excel 2003 file, even though I opened up Excel 2007, the way my system's set up is it saves it as a 2003. You'll see if I go end down that there are 65,536 rows. If I hit the Control Home button, that puts me back to the A1 cell. So you'll notice as we refer to different cells in Microsoft Excel, we will refer to the column first and the row second. The first thing I want to do is I want to save this file. I'm going to go up to the Office button, choose Save As, and you'll see right now the way my computer's set up, it says Save As type Excel 97 2003 workbook. I don't want that. I want it to actually be an Excel workbook, which makes it an Excel 2007 file. The name of this workbook will be Fixed Payment Amortization Schedule. And I want to save that right now, let's say on my, I'm going to move it into my 232B folder. So I click on My Documents, Accounting 232B, and I will put it in this basic directory here. So I choose Save. One of the things we're going to do in setting up our workbook is to follow some basic formatting rules of thumb. When we set up workbooks, we normally are going to have certain variables that are going to change based on the user's desires, and then you're going to have the results based on those variables. So we tend to set up a data section and an answer section. Within the data section, we'll mainly have variables, and we'll highlight those cells to indicate that those are variables that the user would input. If it's something that the user won't be inputting, we just leave it as a white background. In order to compute the monthly mortgage payment for a fixed payment calculation, we need to know certain information. So let's assume this is a home mortgage. So we will need the home price. We'll need the down payment percentage. When companies lend borrowers money to purchase a home, they will usually require that the borrower put some money down. So although the home price may be, let's say, $500,000, the user might have to put in 20% of that. So the loan amount would certainly be less than the home price. That provides a little safety for the lender. We can then calculate the down payment dollar amount based on the information given so far. Another piece of information we can then compute is the loan amount, which will be the difference between the home price and the down payment. Next, we will ask for the interest rate and the loan period, and we'll ask that be put in years. We don't want it input in months. And we'll put it in, and then we can compute the payment. For example, home price. So what I did is I just simply moved my mouse up to cell C8. I clicked on it once, and that allows me to start typing in any number. So let's assume this home price is $500,000. Next thing we're going to do is ask for the down payment. Now you can either type in 20 and then put the percent symbol, such as that, or you can put in 0.2 and it will convert that to 20%. You just need to make sure you're aware that 0.2 is equivalent to 20%. You just move the decimal over 2 points and put a percentage on the end. The down payment then, in dollar terms, would have to be the home price times the down payment percentage. Now you'll notice what I didn't do, and what I strongly encourage you not to do, is you don't just type the numbers 500,000 directly in this down payment cell and then multiply by 0.2. Although that will be correct, if the user later changes their mind and says, no, it's a $600,000 loan, you'll notice that the down payment didn't change. And the answer is because it doesn't, the reason that didn't change is because it simply doesn't refer to the home price cell of C8 and the down payment cell of C9. The way to bring this formula up, if you wanted to see that formula again, you can just click on cell C10 and then you hit the F2 button. That's the edit button. It allows you to edit that. Another thing you can do is simply delete the cell and start over. So I'm going to go equals C8 just by clicking on it times C9 by clicking on it, and you'll see that comes out to a down payment of $120,000. So let's say later on they change the down payment to 30%. You'll notice that the down payment dollar amount changed. Next, the loan amount can be computed by referring to the home price minus the down payment percentage. Let me just note one other thing while we're here. When you input certain variables, what you can do is you can name this cell. For example, I've clicked on cell C8. I'm going to go up into this name box up in the top left, and I'm going to type home, and don't leave a space, maybe do an underscore, price. Now what you'll notice is that this cell is named. That's a named cell. Next, I'm going to go to down payment percentage, and I'm going to type down underscore payment underscore percentage. So the name can actually be quite long, so that's named. So I'm going to go back and change the down payment calculation by deleting it and going equals home price, and you'll see that the name home price comes in now rather than cell C8, and it makes your formulas a little easier to read. Now I'm going to multiply by the down payment percentage, and so now formula is still correct. You'll notice I can change this to be 100,000 and it turns out to be a 30,000 down payment. But the formula, when I hit F2, provides a little more information as to what that calculation is doing. So I'm going to do that again as well for the down payment dollar amount. Down payment amount, because I want to use that in computing the loan amount. So to do the loan amount, I'm going to hit equals in cell C11, click on home price minus the down payment amount, and enter. Next we'll put an interest rate. Now the interest rate is 5.5%, but I'm going to enter it as 0.055. I'd also like to name that cell, so we'll call that interest rate and hit enter. Another bit of information we need from the user is the number of years that this loan will last. So I type in 30 and I'll type in loan period years. So I'm just naming all these cells because it'll be nice later on to refer to them. Next, payment. The payment can be computed based on the information provided. So I'm going to type equals, and I'm going to use a function in Excel called the PMT function. PMT. Excel has numerous built-in functions. You can find those functions by going to formulas and, for example, financial, and I'll drag down here and you should see PMT. So that would be this formula, and I could click it, and that would bring up these function arguments, which you can type into this box: the rate, the interest rate, the number of periods, the present value, future value, and the type, whether the payment's at the beginning or the end of the period. Or, cancel that. I can just hit escape to get out of that formula. I can just type equals PMT. So whatever you prefer, you can bring up the formula, and it does provide you some help, as you can tell, how to make these computations. So the first bit of information in the PMT calculator is the rate. So the rate, I'm going to click on that cell, which is cell C12, but you'll notice the name interest rate comes in. That interest rate, though, is an annual interest rate. And maybe I could have named it annual interest rate to make this math seem a little more obvious. But since I need to compute monthly payments, I'm going to take that annual interest rate and divide by 12. Next, I need the number of periods. So I'm going to click on cell C13. That brings up the loan period in years. But since I need to convert this to monthly payments, I'm going to multiply that by 12. So that effectively, on a 30-year loan, means it will be a 360-month payment life. Hit a comma, and now this is asking me for the PV, which is the present value, meaning what is the principal amount that's being borrowed now. So we can go up and click on the loan amount. Looks like we haven't named that cell, but we'll leave it for right now. We can come back and edit that later. And now I can finish it off. If I did want to say maybe at the end of the life of this loan that you'd have to still pay some amount, for example, maybe we'll pay $50,000 of this loan off over 30 years and the remaining $20,000 would be paid at the end of the life of the loan, like a balloon payment, then I would put that in as future value as the balloon payment. But in this case, we'll assume it's a fully amortizing loan, meaning it will be zero at the end of the life of the loan. In this case, I would like to go back and change that. So I'm going to go back to loan amount and cell C11 and type loan underscore amount. And so I can get back into my payment, hit the F2 button, and where it was C11, I just can highlight that and then click on C11 again, and now it recognizes that that is loan amount. So I think this works pretty well. Let me change one more thing because I think it will be a little more intuitive. On interest rate, I'm going to call that the annual interest rate instead. Annual interest rate. Now go back to my payment, hit F2, and instead of interest rate, I want to see if it'll come up as annual interest rate, which it does, and hit enter. So I think that formula now should make sense to use. We've got an annual interest rate, which we've divided by 12 to get down to a monthly interest rate. We've got a loan period in years, which we have to multiply by 12 to get the total number of payments, periods, in months, and the loan amount, which is the present value. And we hit enter. You'll notice that the payment comes up as a negative number. What that does is that represents a cash outflow. If you understand your accounting, that represents a credit effectively. But if we want it to actually be presented as a positive number, we can just hit minus. So I went back into edit, hit minus, and you can show that it comes up as a positive number. With that, we're ready to create our amortization schedule. In the amortization schedule, we will usually note the month, the payment, the interest paid in this payment, the principal, which is the amount of the loan, and the balance. Our months are going to start with 0, which is the very beginning, and then 1, 2, and if I wanted to spend quite a bit of time, I could number these 3, 4, but I don't want to do those manually. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on cell A19, hold the shift button down, drag it down to 21, and let go. So now this is highlighted. You can also do that by simply highlighting, holding the left mouse button down, dragging through, and now that's highlighted. It means it's selected. One thing you'll notice now is if you put your cursor over the bottom right of this cell, the selected range, it turns into crosshairs. And that allows you to then hit the left mouse button and drag, and you'll see that it's recognizing that sequence. If I let go now, it shows that it's up through 5. But if I want to keep going down to 360, I just drag that crosshair again, go all the way down to 360. I overshot it there a little bit, no worries, just go back. And then once you get to 360, just release the left mouse button, and it's all numbered for you 360. Since I'm now down at the bottom, but I really want to be up towards the top, I can hit the End Up button. And what that does is it goes all the way to the top of the range of values. Now the reason it stopped here at month is because there's a blank cell here. Blank cells stop that function from continuing. So End Up hits the blank. If I do End Up again, it then goes until it hits another value. So practice with that. It allows you to move around in your spreadsheet a little faster than what you might be used to. I'm going to drag this, I'm going to move up a little bit higher so you can see all the variables. And in our very first month, what we're going to do is we're going to choose the original opening balance, which is equal to the loan amount. Now, one thing you should notice is that when you use a range name, this range name is a fixed reference to cell C11. If you go up into your formulas, you'll notice that you can go to your name manager and click on Name Manager, you'll see these different names that we're using. And loan amount is one. If we click on loan amount, we should see that it refers to the absolute reference of cell C11. What that means is that dollar sign there is telling you that we'll always refer to cell C, and the dollar sign before the 11 means you'll always refer to row 11. So this name, loan amount, will always refer to cell C11 no matter where you use the name loan amount. So I'm going to close that. Our payment, as you can tell, will be cell C14. Now I'm not going to name that payment because I want to teach another principle about absolute and relative references. Payment here, if I leave this as is to say equals C14, this is considered a purely relative reference. That means if I hit enter, it does refer to cell C14. But if I were to copy this cell and paste it anywhere else, it's possible that the column reference as well as the row reference could change. For example, if I'm in C14, I'm going to move on to it, and I hit Control C to copy, and I move it down 2 rows and hit Control V to paste, and then hit Edit, you notice that I'm now referring to cell C16. Why? Because when it was in cell B20, when that formula was in B20, it referred to C14. But now I've copied the formula down 2 rows, which added 2 to the formula. Added 2 to the row of that cell reference. So it was C14, it's moved down 2, now it's C16. And that'll work no matter where you copy that. If you change the row reference, then the formula that it refers to that row reference will also change. Now if you change the column, for example, if I go up here to B20 and I copy, and I go over maybe 3 columns and then paste, Control V, you see that the column reference changed. So you see that? When it's over here in B20, it was referring to C14, which was up a number of rows and over 1 column. So now you see when I copy that formula over, it's up a number of rows and over 1 column. That is a purely relative reference. Now I'm going to delete these 2 because they don't belong. One thing you need to realize is that as I copy this down, Control C and copy it down, that doesn't work because it needs to always refer to the payment, which doesn't change. This is a fixed payment calculator. So you don't want that reference to change to C15, C16, C17, C18. You want it to always refer to C14. So the way to do that, I'm going to delete it again just to show you. You hit equals, click on C14, and then you want to put a dollar sign in front of the C to fix the column and a dollar sign in front of the 14 to fix the row. A quick way to do that is to hit the F4 button. That is a toggle which changes this to a purely absolute reference. If you hit F4 again, now only the row is fixed. If you hit F4 again, now only the column is fixed. If you hit it again, you're back to a purely relative. Since I want a purely absolute reference, I'm going to hit it one more time so that when I copy it down to all the other cells, down to 360, it will always refer to cell C14, as noted here. Good. Next, what we can do is we compute the interest on this particular loan. The interest will always be based on the last month's balance, whatever the balance is, and as you know, in an amortization schedule, the balance will decline over time. So it will be equal to the prior month's ending balance, which is the outstanding loan amount, times interest for 1 month. So let's do that. It's going to be equals the prior month's ending balance times, and I'm going to put a left parentheses to make sure this math is accomplished first in the order of precedence, the interest rate, the annual rate, but since I only want 1 month's worth of interest, I have to divide by 12. Now the question, before you go and finish this formula, is if I were to copy this formula down to row 360, am I going to have any problems? Okay, E19. If I were to copy this down 1 row, it would then refer to E20. Do I want that to happen? Yes, I do, because it needs to refer to the balance of the prior month. So this purely relative reference is fine to be copied down. Now the annual interest rate, as you notice, when I name a range like this, the default is to make it an absolute reference. So this annual interest rate will always be referring to cell C12. And you can go up and look at formulas again. Let's do that just so you know what we've done. Under Name Manager, Annual Interest Rate, and if you see that it says we're on sheet 1, the cell that we're referring to is on sheet 1. The exclamation mark is just part of the coding. The dollar says the C is fixed, and the dollar says the 12 is fixed. So the annual interest rate will always refer to cell C12. No matter where you copy that word, annual interest rate, it will always refer to cell C12. Therefore, if I go back to C20, we feel confident now that this formula has been modified so that it can be copied down and it will be correct for all rows involved. The principal is the amount that the loan should be reduced because the payment exceeded the required interest rate. So if you hit equals, take the payment minus the portion that relates to interest, you get the principal reduction. I'm going to hit F2. And now we ask ourselves, if I were to copy this formula down, will it be appropriate for all other cells? If I were to copy this down, then it would be equals B21 minus B21. It will be equals B21 minus C21. And it copies down B22 minus C22. Is that what we want to have happen? The answer is yes, because I want that formula to refer to the payment and the interest on its particular row. Next, we can go over to balance. I'm going to hit equals the prior month's balance minus the principal reduction. By doing that, what that tells me is I started with the $70,000 loan. I made a payment of $397.45. $320.83 of that was interest. Therefore, the excess was a principal reduction, which took us from $70,000 down to $69,923.38. Now here's the nice part. Since we've already numbered these down to 360, and since we feel that all these formulas are properly purely relative or purely absolute or a mixed relative absolute, we feel that this row of formulas is now correct. We can take this row, highlight it, so you click cell B20, hold the shift button down, you can go end right arrow key, and that highlights that whole row. And now here's the nice part. Move your cursor over the bottom right where those crosshairs appear and just double click. And what it's just done is it's copied it all the way down to the bottom of where you've already labeled these rows. So I'm going to click on cell E20 and then go end down. And what that shows you at the very bottom, that this loan has become fully amortized. So it works. It seems like our formulas are working properly. Now I'm going to go end up to put me back to the top. And now here's the miracle of Excel. What if the person says, well, actually, I just had a big inheritance, and therefore I think I can afford a home that's a little bit more expensive, and I'm going to buy a home that's $500,000. So they can change that up in the home price, and you see that all this information then changed. The challenge in this particular case, which is good that this came up, is that these values are now too large. And that's why it becomes pound, pound, pound. So a quick way to fix that would be to go up here, between E and F, and you see that double arrow appears, and you just double click, and it does an auto fit of the column so it's properly sized. Before we spend too much time formatting, let's make sure that all of our values here have been properly formatted to be a currency. So I'm going to click on cell B19, hold the shift button down, go to E19, and then go end down. Do it one more time, end down, and you see I've selected the whole range. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the home button, and I'm going to make these all dollar, let's say. So it's under accounting. The type of formatting number is accounting, and I choose dollar, and so it looks like this now works. So I'm going to go to E19, end down, and you see it's 0. Looks like that's all nicely formatted. And so let's go back and maybe change this home price to be $750,000, and you see everything updates, the down payment updates, the loan amount updates, monthly payment, everything all updates. Let's do a little more formatting here. If you want to format multiple cells in the same way, what you can do is you can hold the control button down as you click them. So I'm going to hold the control button down. I clicked on home price. I'm going to click on down payment dollar amount, the loan amount, as well as the payment. And I want all these to be formatted the same way. So maybe I'll choose accounting. And that is, those are all now formatted properly. Now let's just make sure our interest rates are formatted the way we want. Interest and down payment percentages are formatted the way we want. Control click C9, control click C12, and I'll make this a percentage. The default percentage is no extra decimal places there, but I want them, so I will go up to the home ribbon under number format, and I'm going to increase the decimal because many interest rates for loans might be a couple decimal places, so it'd be more helpful to see both those decimal places. One other thing we might choose to do is, why don't we take the down payment, control click, interest rate, control click, and just holding that control button down, and let's center those. So we've done a few things. Another thing we might choose to do is let's highlight those cells that we would expect the user to put data into. So for example, the home price will be a user input, the down payment is user input, the down payment percentage is a user input. Down payment dollar amount is a calculation, so we don't want the user to touch that, nor do we want them to touch the loan amount. The interest rate is a user input, the loan period in years is a user input, but the others, the payment, for example, is simply a calculation. So I'm going to change the color of those to maybe be maybe a blue, whatever color that is. Good. And that helps the user know, okay, these are the cells that we will be inputting. Another thing that you'll learn later is how to maybe lock down these cells so that the user cannot touch them. They'll be protected. In my answer section, I'd like to highlight the column titles. And Control B is a hotkey to bold, Control U is a hotkey to underline, and then up here in alignment I can hit center, and that makes that look a little bit nicer. Another thing we can do is on the answer section here, I'd like to highlight from A16 to E16, and maybe I'll change the color of that to be this peach color, and I want to put a border around it, a thick border, so I'm under the home, and put a thick border around that, and on the answer section, click on cell A16, Control B, Control U, and so that kind of gives a distinctive area so people know, okay, below this is answer section, above that is data section. So let's format the data section as well. Change that maybe to a different color. I'll put a box around it, and I will change the color. Maybe we'll do maybe the blue here. This is a type of blue. And on the data section, Control B, Control U. And that just makes it a little more distinctive and might help appear a little more professional. Now before you finish up, you want to label it. So there's certain spreadsheet formatting rules of thumb, things that you should always do or that in your particular company they would expect you to do, so that when this gets printed, people know what it's for, who prepared it, and even maybe where they can go and find the file again. So we will call this the mortgage payment calculator and amortization schedule. We can say this is prepared by, and in my case, so let's be Kevin Kimball, and prepared on. Now in this case, I'm just going to show you a function called the today function. I'm going into cell C3 and just type the word today, and left parentheses, right parentheses, and that gives you today's date. So actually tomorrow when you open this up, it'll show that it's prepared on that day. But just so you know that function, it's kind of a useful function. Another thing that's useful is you type in the purpose. So for example, the purpose of this worksheet is to compute the payment for a mortgage at a specified rate for a specified period. And I'm going to click right before payment, and we'll call this the fixed payment. And if I hit enter, you see that extends beyond the range that I would be expecting to print out. So what you can do is you can actually merge these cells. So I'm going to hold the shift button down and move over to cell E4, and under the home ribbon alignment I'm going to click on merge cells. So what that just did is it combined cell A4 to E4, so now it's effectively one cell. But so that you can see it's now it's been cut off because that cell doesn't continue. What you can do now is on alignment click wrap text, what it means is once it goes beyond the width of the cell, it then wraps to the next row. But you can't see that yet because the row is too short. So I'm going to move my cursor between row 4 and 5, and I'm going to drag this down so it's wide enough or tall enough so that that whole purpose appears. Another thing you can do is you can click into the formula bar, highlight purpose, and go Control B, Control U, and that makes that a little stands out a little bit more. Finally, I'll Control B the title, and I think we're pretty much done. So there's some spreadsheet formatting rules of thumb. Maybe one last thing we can do is we can show the file path. So one way to show the file path when this does get printed out is click on the page layout, and under page layout you can hit this little arrow in the bottom right under the page setup grouping, and this brings up this particular menu. Click on header and footer, and we want to put this in the footer, so click on custom footer, and we'll have the file path in the bottom left. So I'm going to click this icon here. You can see these are, you could insert the time, you can insert the date. There's a lot of different things that you can put in here. You can even insert a picture if you have some label for your company. But I'm going to hit insert file path. And so this is actually VBA code. This means that it's going to put in the path followed by the file, and I'm going to hit OK. What you should see now is a preview of what that's going to look like. So what this says is it's in Documents and Settings under My Documents in this folder 8, Accounting 232B, and that's the name of the file. So if I hit Print Preview, you can see down here at the bottom is that file path, and that'll be nice whenever that prints out that people will see that. I think this is good for one day. As long as you can do this, I think that's a good start on knowing how to create a mortgage payment calculator. Aloha.